What is up, guys? So, this is a book I've been looking forward to since I even heard it was announced. So, John Upsopos, who wrote The Oracles of Apollo, has put out this new book, The Secrets of Hellenic Polytheism. So, this book is a work unto itself that I am so happy that has been released for mass consumption, because this book alone will do something special for a lot of people. And so if you don't know what this even is, John Apsopos has taken the manuscripts of the works of Eumistos Plethon, who was a Greek living in the 1400s. Now, that was during the classic age of Christianity that we always hear about. So needless to say, Christianity was running rampant. And Plethon, he rejected Christianity in the 1400s, and I think also the late 1300s, into the 1400s, if I'm not mistaken. And he decided to follow the gods of Hellas, or Greece, and follow Zeus. And he created his own spiritual path. Now, what's interesting about Plethon is that a lot of people in modern day say that he is the connection between ancient Greece and the old ways and moving into today. So what modern author John Apsopos has done is that he's taken the surviving works of Plethon and has converted it to our modern language so we can study how Plethon believed and worshiped the gods. And why I say the surviving works is because after Plethon's death, there was a Christian fanatic, to say the least, who always accused Plethon of heresy and satanic worship for worshiping anyone outside of Jesus and the Catholic Church, or it's not the Catholic Church, just the Christianity Church in general. And so, with that said, this Christian came and found the works of Plethon. And history says that he spent 4 hours, because there was massive tomes compared to what has survived in history. And what this person did is that he took the works of Plethon and he literally spent over 4 hours destroying page after page after page after page, while leaving the table of contents for the work. So history can still see what Plethon had in total, but a lot of it was destroyed by this Christian who just kept the juicy parts, quote unquote, to prove that Plethon was a heretic. And what was kept is what we read today and what we have studied. And it is such a core to that was left, is that, like I've mentioned, you can make a spiritual practice in Plethon did, and today we can as well. So little did that Christian know that he was destroying works after works, which could have been valuable, and he could have also been editing the book in a way too to just slim it down and trim out the quote unquote fat. Not necessarily fat, because sometimes, depending where you go, fat's tasty. And getting it down to modern consumption, which was not this guy's intention, which is funny how the fate worked out that way. All right, so I just opened up the book so you can see the chapters if you were curious what is actually inside. So I won't read every little thing, but I'll let you get an idea of how it is and how it's broken down. So the introduction, it talks about the history of who the author was and kind of what I've told you in his lineage of where he studied and who he admired and learned from. Then it goes into his work, the first chapters. And then the gods. We'll talk more about how he sees the gods in this review so you can get an idea. Then you got the sacred calendar. So like I said, rituals and rites, and how to worship for ordinary days and holy days and fasting and monthly and annual holidays. Invaluable resources. Like I said, this book alone is going to change lives. invocation for morning, afternoon, and evening because he believed to pray 3 times a day. And it was very much in detail, but you could use as much of the ritual or takeaway as you needed or wanted if you felt quote unquote lazy. That's what I like about Plethon, is that he literally told people, well, if you're lazy, you could take this out. So that's funny. And then you got hymns, how to be excellent. So talking about the virtues. Then reconstructed doctrines such as faith, prayer, purification, sacrifice, powers of the 7 planets, which are the celestial gods, if I do remember correctly from this book, in the daemons. And then conclusion. So it's only 235 pages, but like I said, so much wealth in this book. And like I said, it's so different than anything you've ever heard of before. So the most shocking thing I think that people would get out of this book that just follow their own interpretation or what they have learned from mythology is the idea, again, that Poseidon and Hera are the married couple. And again, he is a follower of my personal belief that mythology is just symbolism, and that what you hear in the myths is just telling stories that have a hidden message of truth rather than literal history. So he is very much in that line of thinking, the same as Pluto and Sallustius. So if you've followed my Sallustius series, then you know about that. So the way he sees it, so I have mentioned in my first cause, or I should say in my Sallustius series, the first cause, or the origin of the universe, basically. So what Plethon calls the gods are ideas. Now, when he says ideas, he doesn't mean just a thought, literal thought, but more of the energy, the essence, whatever you can call this god or goddess, this being. We'll call it a being. He calls it an idea. And so the first cause, as mentioned in Sallustius, is the beginning of the universe. And he calls the thing, the creature, not creature, but the creator that started it all, he calls this first cause Zeus. So everything, again, according to Plethon, sprung from Zeus. Zeus is the creator and called the All-Father. Someone used to ask me that I've never heard that Zeus called the All-Father, but philosophers have called him the All-Father, and it's not just an Odin thing. And so what's interesting, that the first cause, so that means that Zeus is the creator of everything. Now you're like, what about the Titans? What about this and that? So according to the Plethon, is that you break it down and you have the gods are in categories, which would be quote unquote children. And so the Olympians, not necessarily the 12 you're thinking of right now, but the Olympians are the creators of the immortal things that never die. And the Titans, again, according to Plethon, are the creators of things that die, such as ourselves were created by the Titans. Like I said, it's different. And he also believes in reincarnation. So with that said, he says that we reincarnate and there is no end to the reincarnation. And that, like I said, I won't give too much away. But with all that to say that Hades and Persephone, or as he says, Pluton and Kore, watch over us when we die, and before we reincarnate. They are the ones that watch over us. And it's also suggested in this book as well that possibly that the underworld is Earth, and that Pluton and Kore, or Hades and Persephone, are the god and goddess of this planet. Again, weird ideas to people that have never heard that before. And I know some people are already shaking their head and like disagreeing. But again, if you have an open mind and you read this, it can change your life and set up a spiritual path that is something can be your own. and something you've never even heard of before. And a lot of it makes sense to what he says. I agree. I remember reading this book. I'm in this book going, huh. Now, one thing that's interesting is that I got from this book, and you can reference a video I had done a year or two ago. He breaks it down to gods and what they are over, or the ideas and what they're over. And he mentions Earth, and he says that Hestia is Earth. Now, that caught my attention because I want you to go back and find my video. I can't remember. I think it's the day I met Helios and Hestia. And I say that I had a dream where Hestia was over the earth and looking over Earth. And I didn't understand it at the time. I assumed that it was a reference to the homes on the earth. And that's, again, why she could be Earth, is because of, this says that the planet is our home. So an interesting idea, but that caught me particularly because of the dream I had. And that video, like I said, you can go back, and that was a year or two ago that I did that. So it was not influenced by this book, and I had a dream where Hestia was over the earth. And I was like, huh. Another thing that's interesting is that he breaks down that the gods are not literal male and female. I know that some people are going to get offended by that because they swear to the gods that they are male and female. So, because they do not have X and Y chromosomes, and they do not have physical bodies. So what makes them male and female is that they say the more forceful energies are male, to say the least. We'll say forceful, and the more passive energies are female. And that is how we relate to the gods. Also with human form, we have given them, because our brain connects to human form. And so with that said, it says in the book that if cattle and horses were like us to think of the gods, then their gods would be cattle and horses, because that's what their brains can relate to, even though the gods are not cattle and horses. And another thing to break out of conformity of what we know is that he says, he gives the gods and goddesses that he mentions different roles than what we know traditionally. But he relates it back to mythology. And then he goes into daemons, and also human beings, and also animal spirits. And I hate to break your heart, but Plethon, and the author, John Opsopos, he says that you can, again, I'm sure with any other work you read in here, you can make up your own mind. But according to Plethon, I hate to tell you, but he says animals become non-existent after death. He says that because, and he explains the reason being is that they don't have basically as complex of a soul as a human does. And John Opsopos, again, he says, now you can make up your own mind on whether that is true or not, because, I know that they have people out there that see animal spirits, but in all that, but we won't go into that. But according to Plethon, he answers the question that I hear a lot, that what happens to our favorite animals when they pass, and nothing happens to them according to Plethon. So again, this is maybe a hard read to some people, at least on that subject. So to show you guys an example of a morning prayer, I am going to recreate what Plethon would do and how he says to call the gods when you worship. And it is going to be something like you've never seen before, and something that looks very similar to what people do of a certain faith nowadays. So check this one out. So to worship in the Plethon way that he teaches, I will speak and demonstrate it as I tell you what I am doing. So as you can see, the first thing to do is to be on both knees. So that already goes against some people's personal taste, because they don't want to be on the knees because they feel it is groveling, when in fact it's just an act of submission, saying that there is higher power than myself, for example. So you start off by being on both knees. Again, you raise your palms into this air, into the sky, and then you chant, "Oh gods, be kind." And then you're going to, first we're doing the prayer to the Olympian gods. And how do we signal that? Is that I'm going to lift my left knee off the ground with some kneeling on my right knee, and I place my hand on the ground and touch it. And then you can call the Olympian gods, or even if you want to, this can be a personal symbol to the gods if you call them the Olympian gods, by touching your right hand while kneeling on your right knee. And now you to invoke the Titan gods and every other gods outside the Olympian pantheon. As we return to both of our knees, hands raised, again like this, and go, "Oh gods, be kind." And now we're going to lift up from our right knee. So I'm kneeling on my left now. I touch the ground with my left hand. Now, this is the one, if you think that is outside of what we consider norm in our modern worship, this is what we're going to do for Zeus. So now we're going to acknowledge King Zeus. And it's going to be, "King Zeus, be kind." So we're not going to do this or touch the ground with just one hand. And you're going to see what I do now. All right, so for Zeus, we're going to do the same thing by being on both knees. And then, "King Zeus, be kind." We do this, and again, now instead of touching the ground with 1 and 2, we do this 3 times. And I reveal my bald spot as I do this. But this is how we then invoke King Zeus. You putting both hands on the ground and touching your forehead to the ground. So like I said, guys, this book is life-changing. So much wealth in here if you're willing to have an open mind and study this book. You can make a practice of your own. So I highly recommend it. And I'm so happy that these chapters have survived, because it gives us an ancient way of how they would worship the Hellenic gods. Even if you don't agree with how Plethon does it or the way he worships, you can at least see how he did it and taught those that followed him in the 1400s. And maybe you'll say that it has evolved since then to where we're just standing with our hands raised and we do it more the traditional way. But again, this is an alternate take with some alternate views, quote unquote, compared to what you've ever heard before. And I am so happy that I finally got to get this book. I just consumed it. Like, I read it. I was like, interesting. Probably my favorite book I'm going to read. And it made me a fan of John Upsopos, because I loved Oracles of Apollo and I love this book. So I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the table next. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, maybe not to follow and worship in this way, but to check out, you're like, whoa, interesting, I want to see what this is about, then I definitely recommend that to you. And I think that if you're a follower of Plato and Pythagoras, maybe that it'll be easier to quote unquote swallow than, and not in a bad way, and take in more than someone who doesn't know anything about Plato and Pythagoras, for example. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review, and I was so excited to read this and then get this review out to everyone so they could see it and check it out. And I'll check you out again in the next video. I'll see ya.